Yes.
Not yet.
I've listened to almost all the podcasts so far.
Good.
I think I'm like 8 episodes in or something like that. I think it was like, it was like Rosicrucian part 2 or 3. I don't know. They had a bunch. They keep going.
Yeah, they have one on the tarot. They have one on
Yeah.
on the Baphomet, the Rosicrucians, the
When we had
Kabbalah.
our-
I think.
When we had our
I'm
meeting
gonna
with
go
them,
live. Get ready.
Okay, we're
I
gonna,
told
like I
him,
said, we're gonna go live. We're gonna start that intro video. Listen, basically next cue is me letting you know that we're live.
cool. Rider Riot was my tarot card deck I gotta do versus the Boda.
Yeah, I use weight. I like weight.
Yeah, my favorite.
All right.
All right, here
Radio
we go, guys.
silence. Get ready.
And we're live.
Welcome back to Keepers of the Word. You're here with Mike, Ron, and James. We put a great show for you today, the Leo Taxil Hoax. But before we get into it, we would like to thank 10th Fathom Designs for setting us up with this great show and producing it.
Make sure to follow all of our social media outlets, Twitch being our favorite. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications to stay up to date with our new content.
All right.
The views and topics of Keepers of the Word are solely our opinions and do not reflect the opinions of any lodges or Grand Lodges.
Today we have a special guest, Daniel Molina from Miami, Florida. What's up, brother Daniel?
How's everything, bro? Thank
Good,
you so
good.
much for having me here.
We are honored to have you. So let's start with your when you started with Masonry. How did that go about? How did you knock?
So, just to give you some backstory on my family, my grandmother's father was a Freemason in Spain, and I had grown up knowing this. And around 5 years ago, I got very curious as to what it was that Freemasonry was about. So I actually went on Google and I Google searched Masonic Lodge near me, and the first link that came up was Hibiscus Lodge. Which would end up being my mother lodge. I reached out to the secretary, who was Brother Hal Peterson at the time. Unfortunately, Brother Peterson passed away last year. But he reached out to me. He invited me to the lodge. I visited, and 5 years later, I'm now here. So
Right on. So in your Masonic journey, when you started looking up Masonry, you started, when you wanted to knock, did you come across any things that were negative or any things that were questionable?
Anti-Masonic.
Anti-Masonic.
yeah, I think I've pretty much come across everything that we have all basically come across. So I had seen things that the Masons had been behind, certain conspiracies, which in a way, the way that I analyze it now and the way that I see it is, it's almost like all of these different smaller conspiracies have just been uh, united into this amalgamation that has become this one giant conspiracy that then the Freemasons were behind. But I mean, just other things like you don't really know what goes on until you're in the higher degrees. This one article had argued that there are 720 degrees in Freemasonry. So I had read anything and everything that you could see.
What stood out to you the most, that where you were like, wait a minute, there's got to be some truth to this, or this has to be wrong?
Well, one thing that wasn't adding up is the fact that all of these different individuals spanning across different fields were members of the craft, but at the same time, all of these conspiracies alleged that Freemasons were trying to take over the world, that Freemasons were murderers and killers. Even going so far, most recently, when the pandemic first started, there were actually a lot of on Instagram, a lot of posts being shared that the Freemasons were behind the coronavirus. That
Right.
Freemasons were actually the ones that had come up with the virus and stored it, and then the Freemasons had released it for population control. So there's always this idea of Freemasons being behind this nefarious, having this nefarious plan against people. And to be honest, the topic that we're discussing tonight actually came from me wanting to dispel these rumors. And I had initially developed a presentation after I became an entered apprentice, kind of discussing what the Taxil hoax was, and how these were allegations that had even been dispelled by the individual that had created them.
And this individual, as we all know, Leo Taxil, for the famous quote, Leo Taxil hoax.
Yeah.
Can we get into that? Do you want to just dive in there and let us know his early beginnings, and then just go for it, man?
Well, for those that might not know about this individual, I'm going to start off by telling people that he, in fact, was a brother, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about his short-lived Masonic career in a
Very
few.
short-lived.
Leo Taxil was a pseudonym that he had undertaken in order to publish a number of works against Freemasonry. But he was born in Marseille, France in 1853. His real name was actually Marie Joseph Gabriel Antoine Jogan Paget. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But that was his original name. And basically, growing up, what he wanted to be was a journalist, and he wanted to be a writer. So he wanted to pursue a career in writing. And it was around the age of 14 or 15 that he was given a book on Freemasonry by a friend. However, we do know that it was around 1867 that he was given the book. But as we know, the Catholic Church and Freemasonry haven't necessarily had the best of relationships historically. Because there was this anti-Masonic atmosphere in his home, the book was actually confiscated. But this still kind of initiated in him an interest in wanting to pursue Freemasonry. So it was in 1881 that he was initiated in a lodge called the Friends of French Honor. However, he didn't progress past the entered apprentice degree, because it was in August of 1881 that he was expelled for literary theft and then publishing pornography. We'll get into that in a little bit. But then, as he was growing up, he became very disillusioned with religion. And then he wanted to dedicate his life to writing not only pornographic material, but also material that was anti-Masonic and then anti-Catholic in nature. And when we talk about the pornographic material, what he ended up doing was he was writing these works that were kind of making fun of religion and the Catholic Church in general. So he was writing these works, like one of them is called The Life of Jesus, The Amusing Bible for Grown-Ups and Children, The Secret Amours of Pius the Ninth. And in these books, what he set out to do was he was arguing that there were inconsistencies, that there were false beliefs that he had found in the Bible. So he wanted to bring them up. And then he was also likening figures in the Catholic Church to Marquis de Sade. So anyone who's not familiar with Marquis de Sade, was the sexual philosopher that wrote a number of controversial books because of his libertine views. But they were very, very much controversial in that time. But then it was this piece of text called the Humanum Genus, which was a papal encyclical that was written by the Pope Leo the 13th, that was specifically against Freemasonry. And what the Pope was arguing is that that time the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith was experiencing a great threat in the form of Freemasonry. So he wanted to make a distinction between the Catholic Church being standing for truth and virtue, and then Freemasonry and Freemasons being everything that was against truth and virtue. So he was making these allegations that for you to become a Freemason, you actually had to denounce your Catholic faith, which, as we both know, that is not true. I'm pretty sure that we all here have a number of our brothers, our great brothers that are of the Catholic faith. And the Pope was writing very passionately against the craft, and Taxil at this time was influenced by this writing because he almost thought to himself, this is how I can get back at the Catholic Church, and his whole point was to prove that the leaders of the Catholic Church were gullible, that they would be able to believe these wild allegations because he had already been a Freemason. He had gone through the entered apprentice degree. So what he did was he said that he was converting to Catholicism, that he denounced everything he had done before, all the writings that he had done, his past life as a Freemason. And then what he wanted to set out to do was, I am going to expose Freemasonry, and I'm going to write out all their secrets. And then he devised this wild, insane plan that took over. It was over the course of 13 years that he was publishing a number of books that were allegedly, exposing different aspects of Freemasonry. So, and that's only the beginning. So,
Do you think that the reason why he got kicked out, you said it was literacy, like he was stealing books?
yeah, literary theft and pornography. So
Right. So he
I
probably
think
got booted because he stole stuff that he was going to use for his upcoming book.
it could have been, or as well, something that I would argue maybe also plagiarism. It could have been that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been the literal, the stealing, just maybe for whatever personal use, or plagiarism.
So this goes out to the lodges that were in France at that time. You guys had 13 years to take them out. You didn't. You failed. I'm sorry. I had to just throw that in there. I'm sorry. Daniel, continue.
Yeah. So when he first started, it was he set out to create this 4-volume history of Freemasonry that he was going to call The Complete Revelations of French Masonry. And then what it was going to focus on was these alleged eyewitness accounts of Satanism that was being practiced in the craft. And then he goes on to give an account of what an alleged initiation into the craft is. So I'm assuming it's in the end. His account of what the entered apprentice degree is like is that there's an initiate that walks into a lodge room. He's blindfolded, and then on a table there is like a sheep. Sometimes it's either a sheep, or other times it'll be an actual individual. And what the initiate has to do is the initiate is given a knife, and the initiate is asked to kill the sheep or the brother. And the brother in question that is allegedly put on the table is said to have been a brother that had gone against his obligation, that had either revealed a secret or had just done something that was against his obligation, that had been a disloyal Mason, and then the initiate had been, forced to kill him or the sheep. They were interchangeable. And the main argument was that an initiate is, or that a Mason is a murderer in spirit, upon being initiated into the craft. And it was in a book called The Devil in the 19th Century that Taxil introduces this character, that maybe some brothers have heard of. She's called Diana Vaughan, who was a supposed descendant of an individual called Thomas Vaughan. He himself was a Rosicrucian alchemist from the 1600s, and he is alleged to have made a pact with the devil, and he had received the Philosopher's Stone. But later on, Diana Vaughan becomes almost like the central figure of the Taxil Hoax. So it almost like moves away, the focus ends up moving away from Leo Taxil and onto Diana Vaughan, because Diana Vaughan ends up becoming this, like, I don't know, it's almost like a mythical figure, an alleged mythical figure within Freemasonry. And she was alleged to have been a member of something called Palladian Freemasonry. So when it comes to Palladian Freemasonry, think of it as I was talking about earlier, the alleged, you don't know what goes on until you reach the higher degrees of Freemasonry. Well, what Taxil was arguing through Diana Vaughan, because Diana Vaughan was just another pseudonym that he had undertaken in order to publish these texts. At the top of Freemasonry, there was this religious cult that was called Palladian Freemasonry, and they were actually the ones that ran Freemasonry across the entire world. And only a select few that were in Freemasonry were allowed to join these higher ranks. And it was alleged to have been constituted on May 20th, 1737. So it was called the Order of the Palladium, or it was also known as the Sovereign Council of Wisdom. And in order to go through it, there were these 3 degrees. There were these 2 masculine degrees that were called the Adelphi, or the Companion of Ulysses. And then there was this female degree that was called the Companion of Penelope. Now, although I am really interested to be able to read what these degrees were allegedly like. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to come across any information as to whatever information Taxil provided for these degrees. But overseeing this entire religious order within Freemasonry and Freemasonry in general was none other than Albert Pike. So Albert Pike was called the head of the order. And get this, I had to write this down because this is too long for me to remember. So his title within this alleged order was the Supreme Commander, Grand Master of the Supreme Council of the Mother Lodge of the Ancient and Accepted Scotch Rite of Charleston. Because Freemasonry and this religious order within Freemasonry was also alleged to be running out of Charleston. That's where all of this, all of these orders and everything was being run from. But Diana Vaughan was a character within the story that there were tales of her. So, for example, there were Masonic ceremonies where we had summoned this gator demon that had written prophecies on her back with its tail. She was described as a figure through Masonic teachings that had been able to liquefy herself. So what we were learning was actually how to be able to turn ourselves into water and to be able to go through walls and things like that. And then in a black mass that happened one night in a Masonic lodge. She had actually been given away to Lucifer by Albert Pike. She had been wed to him. There's also another account where she had also been wed to the demon Asmodeus, and then she had attained 2 ranks within this higher order. So she was known as the Grand Mistress of the Temple, and she was also the Grand Inspectress of the Palladium. And then, as I mentioned before, in being given away, she had also attained this status of being the Masonic High Priestess. However, all of this took a turn in 1895 when she had a vision similar to Joan of Arc. And she came to the conclusion that what she needed to do was denounce her membership in Freemasonry, denounce all of her beliefs and everything that she had been involved in, and she fled. She ran away from this order, and she went on to publish this work called Confessions of an Ex-Palladist, which is where all this information ultimately came from. Her involvement in Palladian Masonry and everything that she had learned, all the things that were allegedly, all the demons that the Masonic order was calling and working with in Masonic lodges. And then it's interesting because she also describes what a Masonic black mass is. And it's just interesting to read what these accounts are like, because one thing that I haven't mentioned yet that is truly astonishing is that throughout this entire time, when Taxil is writing these works, not only under the pseudonym of Leo Taxil, but he's also writing under the name of Diana Vaughan. What the agreement was is that he was going to be working with the Catholic Church, and he was going to be providing them these texts, and they were going to be distributing them to the public to sort of lend credence to the idea that that Freemasonry was this great threat to the Catholic Church. But not once did any members that were coming in contact with Leo Taxil ask for verification that Diana Vaughan was real, or there were other not once, there was never a moment. Well, at the end there was, and it was more so because the public now wanted to become acquainted with who these other individuals were. But during this entire time, not once did any members say, "Hey, so you gave us this from Diana Vaughan. Can we meet her? Can we talk to her? Can we see how she's doing?" Not once was that asked. So it's surprising to me. It was just something that was kind of accepted, blind faith. But ultimately, there was a moment where it ended up happening. After some years, people were kind of questioning, well, okay, we're getting all these texts, and we see that all of this is allegedly going on, but we want a firsthand. We want to see Diana, for example, firsthand. So Taxil actually called a press conference at the Paris Geographical Hall, and that press conference took place on April 19th, 1897. And it was in that press conference that he was going to unveil Diana to the world. However, as the Geographical Hall was being crowded with individuals, Taxil came out and just announced that it had all been a lie, that all of these accounts were fictitious, that the everybody that had been reading this and accepting it, that they were all gullible, and the crowd actually turned on him. There's a description, because later on he goes on to be interviewed by a Parisian newspaper, and there's a quote that I want to relay from that, because I think it's very important to this. but the crowd turned on him. They started throwing things at him. He had to actually run out of the hall through like a back door type of situation. And there were death threats that were issued, directed at him, afterwards. But later in his life, he was interviewed by a Parisian newspaper, and the journalist had asked him, why is it that you did what you did? Like, why would you uphold this for 12 years? And he gives a pretty long answer, but I think that the end of his answer is the most interesting part of all of it. He says, I spent with my fellow authors hatching out new plots, new unheard of perversions of truth and logic, each trying to outdo the other in organized mystification. I thought I would kill myself laughing at some of the things proposed, but everything went. There is no limit to human stupidity. Now, the reason why I point that out, and the reason why when I give this presentation in Lodge, why I still call Taxil a brother, is because seeing what he did perfectly reminds me of the Master Mason degree. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to go too in depth into it, but for me, one of the ways that I interpret the Master Mason degree is as a cautionary tale. Because if you're a brother and you've been initiated, you understand that something detrimental happens in the Master Mason degree. And when you sit back and you ask yourself, who were the perpetrators of what happened? They weren't just everyday people, They were people that are important in a sense of how we refer to each other. So so it's almost like this is a perfect example of just reminding yourself of why guarding the West Gate is important in the craft, is because of things like this that can happen.
Correct. And also, with Leo Taxil being who he was, you had many people. Well, like you said, you had everybody believing. Imagine this today, right? Where if he put that out in with media and communication now, it would have just went viral, right?
Yeah.
Back then, it took time. It took time
Yeah.
to get from country to country, city to city, and so on. But I think within 12 years of just telling all these series of lies,
This was kind of like wildfire. I
yeah,
think it was like 10 months.
that I heard that
It blew up in 10 months.
all of the propaganda and the papers and the like you said, the posters and all that stuff got around.
They ran it.
And it started to really, really take off. And then, of course, people, with the very, they weren't very smart back then. We didn't have Google. We didn't have all that stuff. They just took it for face value. And like you said,
Yeah.
Everybody just believed her. I mean, believed
Yeah.
him being her.
Yeah.
And 10, 12 years later, when it comes out, right? It's like, get the tomatoes and the lettuce.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the
Chuck
guy
it
didn't
at
get
him.
murdered,
So after all that, what was the outcome for Leo?
That I know of. All I know is that there were a lot of death threats that were directed to him. But more than that, I'm not sure, because when it comes to a lot of these texts that I'm aware of, I don't think that they have been translated. And a lot of information actually comes from we have been talking about it before the show went live. Brother Arthur Edward Waite actually wrote, which is interesting enough. He wanted to analyze what was going on. So as it was going on, he thought to himself, he's like, well, some of this doesn't really make sense. Because as you know, brother Arthur Edward Waite was a Freemason. So he actually, if anybody is interested in reading further into this, and I know that he wrote 2 books on the subject, and they're both sold together. So it's called Devil Worship in France with Diana Vaughn and the Question of Modern Palladism. So if you're interested in reading more about that, you can definitely go check it out. But as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Leo Taxil, it was just going into obscurity. You know, there were death threats that were issued to him because of what he had done. But aside from that, that I know of, nothing else.
Yeah, I think he just
It was
lived
like
his life out, and he was old when
yeah,
he passed. He had
he
like a
had
deathbed
his
confessions and stuff like that. But
yeah, he had almost like his 15 minutes of fame, and then it was like that's
Mhm.
it. You know.
Somebody asked, "Do you think on our chat, our live chat, do you think Aleister Crowley knew of Leo Taxil?"
most likely,
It's a possibility. I'm
It's
not
a
gonna.
possibility.
Yeah.
I've never read anything from Crowley that that confirms that. But it definitely is a possibility because this again, it spread like wildfire. You know.
And it's interesting because I mean, whenever you look up anything that is related to, well, you look up Masonry or Freemasonry, the good stuff doesn't come up first, right? It's
Right.
always the Leo Taxil or things that are related to the Leo Taxil hoax.
Mhm.
And when you try to explain it to people, they're still stuck in the no, you're not high enough. Love
Right.
that part. I love
right,
that. You're not
right.
high
You're
enough.
not
You don't
high
know.
enough. I've done everything, man. I've done it all. Like I've done it all. Blue Lodge, York, right?
To think
God's
that
right. I
Taxel
mean,
himself was the one that started that "you're not high enough" mentality.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah, and it goes back to that, Palladian Freemasonry,
exactly.
and in their meetings, they were described as these, like, they were having orgies and working with demons, and that one of the end goals for Freemasonry was eventually to overthrow the Catholic Church. So
right.
that's what Taxil was positing as Freemasonry's end goal.
It's like he's fueling this big war between Catholicism and Freemasonry. I'm surprised things didn't abrupt, or blow up as much as they did.
It was already
Yeah,
bad to
and
begin
if
with.
It was very bad, yeah.
and
Bad for a
actually,
long time.
I had mentioned the Humanum Genus was what Taxil
One
what
of his
had inspired Taxil to actually start this. But for anybody that's interested, Albert Pike actually wrote a response to the Humanum Genus. So if you're interested, definitely check that out because Pope Leo XIII had written the Humanum Genus, and then Albert Pike wrote a response to that as well.
as he would.
Yes.
And do you know what his response was, or just a quick, summary of what that was?
Well, it was essentially arguing the main point that Pope Leo XIII was making, which is that Freemasonry was not a threat to the Catholic Church, that Freemasonry was not a threat to society. So that was kind of the main gist of what Pike was writing.
One of the purposes of us having this conversation is to dispel the misconceptions, right? The misconceptions of Freemasonry and this whole relation to Satanism, the whole Palladian Freemasonic degrees that just don't exist. And then today, now you have people running rampant on IG asking you to join the Illuminati. They'll have pictures of
Every
Masons
day.
Yeah.
with money, and a lot of that comes from this. This is the mustard seed that sprouted it all. You know what I mean? So it's sad to know that this has been going on for over 100 years, and again, to the French Masonic lodges, you guys had 12 years to do something, man.
And that's actually happened to me where there was it was maybe about it was at the end of last year around November. There was a brother that sent me uh, a screenshot of one of these accounts that had taken pictures of me and
Yeah.
was reaching out to him to join the Illuminati.
Hey, man. Hey, that just shows that you're doing good work. All right. If they're using your photo, you're doing good stuff.
They've copied us. They've copied.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've
Fake
done
accounts,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
All kind of stuff. We get hit up daily.
IG really needs to do something about that.
I mean,
because
it's
it's
the
ridiculous
scams,
at this
you know?
point.
One thing, another point that I always like to make when I talk about this is I think that it stresses the importance of Masonic education because I think that when it comes to moments like this, these individuals that share these false posts and these crazy outlandish things, that's a moment where almost the profane are trying to define Freemasonry. And I think that through Masonic education, that's where brothers get to define Freemasonry and what it is. So I think that's another reason why Masonic education is important. Not only for ourselves, not only do we become better brothers in engaging in Masonic education, but we also get to, get to inform others, and,
Right.
and educate others not only into how Freemasonry helps us grow, but also other aspects like the historical. How can I say the historical movements that have happened, sort of like with Shriners Hospital and other charitable organizations that we are also involved in. So I think that's where Masonic education is key and where it's important, because then that's truly how you combat and how you dispel these crazy outlandish things.
Correct.
I think it's also important for us to get that education so that we can prevent a perpetuation of these types of things. I mean, if you look at this story and how long ago it happened and how long it's taken its toll on society, on Freemasonry, on the Catholic Church. I mean, everything from his imagery of Baphomet,
Yeah,
being this satanic idea that people to this day still have that in their mind, that's an evil satanic thing, and
right.
Has
and
nothing to do with
we want to
Satanism.
prevent if we want to prevent this from happening again, and especially in the climate that we're in with all of these people, these Illuminati fakes on Instagram and stuff like that. If we want to prevent this from being another 100 years into the future of negative connotations for Freemasonry, we need to be educated. We need to improve ourselves in Masonry and be ready to show the rest of the world what it is Masonry really is about, not about this other stuff that someone else is proposing.
Yeah, and I see that you guys are gonna cover it in another episode, but just because Mario and I have been talking leading up to this episode, shout out to Mario. But I'll just mention that the Baphomet also in a way kind of played a key role in this whole
Very key.
hoax, because Taxil actually used the sabbatic goat figure
Mhm.
from one of his books. So it kind of shows Freemasons kind of like giving a toast to the sabbatic goat in the middle, and then he's kind of like levitating over all of them. So that now you get that imagery that continues to be used to this day, and it was Levi's sabbatic goat.
Right. And for the uninitiated, when they see that and they being fed all this propaganda from the church, the devil's everywhere.
Yeah,
They see that and they don't understand what it means or what it represents.
This is why we need to have these conversations.
This is
And
why we do this.
I don't know why it hasn't been hit head on in the last 20, 30 years, and these conversations haven't been had. And I'm pretty sure, other people have talked about them on certain, podcasts, but they need to be really out there in the open. So that way, when you have these people, "Oh, you're not high enough, you're not this, you're not that," when you're taking information, if you're taking information firsthand through experience, then you have facts, right? You're sitting on facts. If you're hearing them through somebody else or through a third person or third party, you really don't have facts, man. I mean, and it's sad that people just go off of that, and all of a sudden, oh well, you guys are evil, you guys are this, you guys are that. The truth is, I wouldn't have joined if it was that. If I saw
right,
anything like that, I wouldn't have been a part of it,
Right.
because
right,
I just don't, that isn't my thing. I wanted to be part of something bigger that was actually doing something for the community, or society in general. I mean, we're all here to build ourselves from within, become better
right.
than we were
Become
yesterday.
better. Right.
Yeah, and again, that it just goes back to the importance of Masonic education, whether it be conversations like this, whether it be information that you maybe share in a lodge in your lodge. This is important because you are dispelling these insane, like for example, a while ago, I know a friend of mine, he didn't believe it, but he had shared with me there was allegedly this man that had was exposing the secrets of Freemasonry. Like we've all seen those videos.
Bill
And
Schneblem.
The
yeah,
vampire
and it's
Mason.
and it's like wild because you hear these things and you're like, this has nothing to do with
Right.
Freemasonry. These are just like
It's
these
insane.
crazy these are these crazy ideas that whoever the individual is coming up with. Um but at the same time, we need to understand that the people that are uninitiated, they might not know any better. They don't know any better, so that's why it's one of our duties. And especially at even going through the fellowcraft degree, I always call the fellowcraft degree the academic degree, because at the end, the charge is telling you, you got to become, you got to involve yourself in these 7 liberal arts. You got to study, you got to become an educated individual. At the end of the entered apprentice degree, the charge is telling you, meet and join a community of individuals that are educated and that you're going to learn from, and that you're going to be able to teach as well. So we're constantly just being reminded that education is key. Education is key. And I think that this is one of the cases where education is key, because then a lot of times I've given this presentation in lodge, and the second that I dropped that Taxil was a brother, everybody is just like shocked. As is the case. A lot of people don't know, as I didn't know. When I found out about this. But it's even crazy to see that this individual was a brother, and yet even after having become a Freemason himself, he said, "Well, I'm going to discredit the craft. I'm going to slay the character of the craft, and the education didn't stick to him." So I don't know. It's just
That
wild.
that proves how important it is to guard that west gate, like you were saying
Yeah.
before. I mean, we have brothers that come in, and if they're going to get turned away, or if they only make it through 1 degree, and then get out there, I mean, how much damage can they do to the craft if they wanted to, if they had the desire, if they had the drive? I mean, obviously Taxel had the drive to do it and was successful at majorly damaging the reputation of the fraternity.
Yeah, and he, at the end of the day, he set out because he wanted to prove a point. He wanted to prove that certain individuals in society were gullible, and unfortunately, it happened. It happened, and it's insane to see that even after he came out and was just like, "Hey, this was all a lie," it was just a bluff. It's a hoax. But to this day, you hear, and they've kind of just been recycled through different avenues and through different views. But you hear and you see a lot of the same rhetoric just being recycled and being upheld to this day, even though those claims have been dispelled.
Have you ever had any situations in your lodge in which kind of brought weirdos to your lodge, or we got some stories? But did you have any situations where you had people show up and just do weird shit or ask you weird stuff?
Um, well,
You do.
Red
I
shoes.
I I'll say I've visited other lodges where on that night they've had visitors, and there have been these individuals that have kind of been, talking about, conspiracy theories, and like, I know what you guys do, but I want to see it for myself, kind of things. But at my lodge, surprisingly never.
That's
At my
good.
at my lodge, surprisingly never. But but there are other individuals again that they go back to, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, because I want to get to the 33rd degree, because when you get to the 33rd degree, that's when you really
Real
become a
teaching.
Freemasonry, and that's when the real fun starts. So
Yeah, we've had our fair share, especially when we were shooting at our old lodge in San Pedro. Oh, one time some guy just showed up, and I guess he paid attention to when we were shooting and the times, and he just showed up, and we were like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, I want to be a Freemason." And when you start to talk to somebody, there's two people who are interested. One is the person who is genuinely interested. They really want to be a Freemason, and they really, they know about Freemasonry, and they want to go through the door and check it out. Then you have the people who, like you said, are just off the wall, crazy, not in tune with reality, and it's really hard to kind of turn them away. It's hard to turn them away without being a rude person or being mean. You
Or
don't
calling
Yeah.
the cops.
yeah, you don't want to. I mean, I don't want to be mean, but sometimes some people just fuck.
They don't
I
get
think
it. Yeah,
the experiences that I've had the most of are individuals that visit, and then through talking to them, you see that what they want to do is they want to advance from a business perspective. So
Yes.
it's almost like
right. Networking.
yeah, where it's like I had an individual one time tell me, he's like, oh yeah, because I wanna, I'm a hard worker, and I want to start my own business, and I know that only CEOs can become Freemasons. So I want to come in and I want to learn all I can from CEOs. And I was like, well, I'm not a CEO, so I don't know what to tell you.
I can tell you, I was conducting a degree with an EA, an apprentice, and he got all the way to almost doing the degree, but he said he had to use the restroom, and he took off.
No
Running for the
way.
He
hills,
literally
huh?
ran. He grabbed his clothes and he ran.
You guys are lucky you didn't have the chamber of reflection.
I know.
That would've
Right,
really
right.
fucked with 'em,
This
dude.
guy took off, and he just said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't kill somebody." He started saying all this stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
whoa,
yeah.
What?
man. Where you,
Yeah.
this guy ate dinner with us. Like, he hung out with us for a while, and then when he
That's
got
why.
to it, he broke out in sweat and literally ran.
That's why when you're prospecting, I mean,
Should be for a
any
year.
lodge, you really need to, unless you're really vibing with the guy, and you already know this dude's like sane
Solid.
and solid. He's he provides for his family. He's a good person, and it works out, right? But for folks that are questionable, you really need to hang out for like a good 6 months to a year, just to get to know the person and see who they are, and what they're about, and how they handle certain conversations, right?
And
Especially if you bring up
no, sorry.
no, I said especially if you bring up Illuminati, and you see people start going off the deep end with that shit, and then they start associating it with Freemasonry, and this person's there
Right.
for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
But to piggyback off of what you're saying, something else that has happened before is when people are visiting, and then they're like, oh well, what are some books that you suggest, or I wanna do some research for myself. Hold off on that. Talk to the worshipful master of the lodge. Talk to the secretary. See if there's any education that the lodge provides, or anything that Grand Lodge provides, that is going to guide you in the right direction. Because if you're going out and you're doing quote unquote research by yourself, this is where you're gonna go. You're gonna find articles written by individuals that are not members of the craft, or just articles that are off the deep end. And if that's going to be your introduction to the craft, then I think that you're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Agreed.
Because that quote unquote personal research, can be damaging exactly because of this. Because then you come across these things where it's like, oh yeah, Palladian Freemasonry, and actually Freemasonry, there's a religious order in the quote unquote higher degrees of the Scottish Rite or of the York Rite or whatever, and then that's when when you come in, and it's like you're just being directed into something that Freemasonry isn't.
And for those out there asking, well, what is there at the higher degrees? Well, guess what? More brotherhood,
More pancakes.
more pancakes.
More
You get the more education,
Yeah.
and fellowship. I think us hanging out with each other. There's certain people that you see that just light up your day. You know what I mean? And seeing brothers at functions. That's It's fun. It's social. It's educational. It's social. There's a bunch of
It's
things.
beautiful. It's beautiful because you know uh, I can be where I am at, and then you guys are where you're at, and yet we're having a conversation. We know that we have gone through the same ritual. We have the same understanding because we've walked the walk, and at the end of the day, we can see each other and probably never having spoken before. And I can call you my brother, you can
We
call me
know
my
each other.
brother, and at the end of the day, that's the relationship that we have.
Exactly.
So
Because
it's a beautiful thing.
It's joy.
And it's the same thing. The same thing with even Mario. Like Mario and I, like I had told you, we've been able to talk before this presentation, but it's the same thing. We could have for the last couple of years never have spoken a day in our lives, but at the end of the day, we're brothers, and that's meaningful in a way that we understand. So it's a beautiful thing.
It's those stepbrother moments that you get where like, we just become best friends. You like magic too?
Right.
It's like weird, and you click, and then
Right.
now you're buddies, and you're
Right.
doing stuff together.
Yeah.
It's fun, man. It's real
Building
fun.
bunk beds.
Yeah, doing karate
Yeah.
in the garage.
Right.
And sharing a lot, being able to share, whether it be personal things, whether it be education, whether it be events, whether it be like hey, I'm gonna be in town, or you're gonna be there, so we can hang out. It's
Right.
it's really it's a beautiful thing.
It's extended
And
family.
yeah.
I mean,
So
like,
so these
we
these
talk
last
every
5
day.
yeah, these last 5 years for me have just been beautiful, just because of the friendships that I've been able to develop.
And those are friendships you would have never had if you hadn't become a Mason.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about it,
Yeah. And again, it's just helpful on all fronts, whether it be talking to brothers about personal things, or even just when it comes to education. It's just like, hey bro, I know you like reading about this, so I'm sending this to you. Or hey bro, I got a quick question, like what do you think about this? It happens. So I think that's beautiful.
We have one question from a brother out here, Mike Samuel. He's a cool homie. Do brothers feel that Grand Lodges or lodges should instruct or recommend brothers not sporting images of Baphomet?
That's gonna depend on where you're
Oh
at.
yeah,
Probably not. I'm gonna say no.
I want to say you do not want to walk into a lodge, like especially if you're new with that. If you've been around for a while and you're cool with everybody, then yeah, I don't see a problem with it because people
Yeah.
know you, right? But if you're new and you just went through your first degree or something like that,
I say business
do
casual.
not recommend you go that far out, because
Yeah.
there's some of the old guard out there that just
Yeah.
think the same way about the situation that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
exists
Well, and
within our lodges.
Then you get
one
blackballed.
Yeah,
No.
one thing that I always mention, and actually I always make sure that I make this comment when I attend the Master Mason degree. I think that prospective candidates become brothers for various reasons. So you'll have brothers that are interested in the esoteric. You have the esoteric aspect of the craft. You have brothers that are interested in the ritual work. You have brothers that are interested in the charity, in the fraternal aspects, and all of those aspects of Freemasonry are valid. But at the same time, what I always tell those brothers is, open yourself up to exploring all different aspects. So when it comes to that, I completely agree with you. I wouldn't be going in with with Baphomet on my shirt, but
No.
because you don't know what aspect those brothers are experiencing Freemasonry through. So maybe you could find yourself in a situation where a brother is going to reach out to you and let you know, like, hey, this is inappropriate or whatever. So always keep it appropriate. Always
Correct.
always keep it appropriate.
Yes, because not everybody has the sixth sense of humor I have. So I just gotta
Yeah.
tone it down, and just take it easy wherever I go. And then
Yeah.
once I feel you out, and and
Then it's
then
like,
it's duck
yeah,
season.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I'm
duck
opening up.
season.
We've had that conversation before, Mike, about being on the level. Not everyone's on that same level, so we have to find those
Right.
brothers that are on our level when we want to be on that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when we know we're someplace where brothers are not on that level, then
Yeah.
we got to be on that level.
Look,
Yeah,
look,
we
some
gotta
some
kind of.
brothers wanna talk to you about alchemy. Some brothers want to talk to you about Baphomet. Other brothers, don't. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's okay. That's fine
I
too.
That's
agree.
okay.
I agree.
They,
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
shoot you down because you don't know that. I'm just, if you're not interested in the conversation, no problem, dude.
yeah.
It's not a big deal. But you shouldn't shoot people down for knowing these things or
Right.
wanting to explore them and understand them. Kind of like what we're having right now. We're having a conversation about the Leo Taxil hoax. We're having a conversation about what happened and why it happened, and it should clear up a lot of bullshit that's out there.
Yeah.
And if we're having this conversation for that specific reason.
And again, I highly suggest, if you're really interested in reading further into this, check out Brother A.E. Waite's book, because I did my best to try to condense 13 years, 13 years of a hoax into a short amount of time. But this is just an insane hoax that happened, and unfortunately it has affected the craft. It continues to affect the craft, but hopefully that can get rerouted someday.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I hope so too. I think with us having more and more conversation and talking about these topics and being able to put them out there to the public, then people will actually see what Freemasonry actually is.
Right.
Yeah.
On that note, I just want to say that, you know, uh, fear is brought on by ignorance, and the death of fear is only going to be through knowledge.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Daniel, do you have anything else you want to add to this great conversation that we're having?
Honestly, I just wanna thank you for allowing me to be on here with you all tonight. I always enjoy talking about this topic. If you follow me on social media, you know that I enjoy talking about a number of other topics as well. But thank you so much for being able to share this, because this presentation, or this topic in particular, was very important to me when I became a Freemason, and 5 years later, it still remains a topic that is very important to me.
Well, we're happy
It
you
should
did
be
the work.
important. It should be important to all of us as Masons to understand how to prevent this from
For me, but
happening
because
again.
I've been able to find that through my involvement. So it has been able to shape me. It has provided personal growth and development that I am grateful for, and I've been able to meet, extremely cool and great brothers like you guys. So thank you so much for giving me this moment to be able to talk to you all tonight.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you, and we're honored to have you on here. And hopefully, we can have you on here again sometime. Do you have any shout outs you want to give out to anybody?
All the brothers that are tuning in tonight. I know Brother Ketterman and I had spoken again. Mario, I see Ivan is there. Ivan, how's everything? All aside from all the brothers that are listening here, anybody that's a listener that's not initiated from Keepers of the Word, all of you guys, and all the brothers across the world, can continue doing what you do, and upholding this beautiful craft, because it's a very beautiful aspect of society that needs to continue.
Thank you. Ron, you got any shout outs, man?
Yeah, man, talking about the brothers that just make us happy to be fellowshipping. I want to shout out to you guys. I haven't seen my Keepers brothers face to face in a bit. I can't wait for our next meetup. I also want to shout out to Eddie G. It's always good to see him. He told me I was his first hug in Masonry, and it's always great to get a hug from that guy. And shout out to Ed Taylor, worshipful True Grip Taylor.
Rip.
Every time I get to hang with him is a joy for sure.
Jamesies, you got any shout outs?
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to Ileana Manzo from Instagram. Thanks for digesting knowledge and hitting me up and asking your questions and following the show. These are listeners. These are listeners that hit me up on Instagram that want to further their information or ask for a book or something like that. I also want to say what's up to Salvatore at Crooked Path, Rhapsody at Points of Light, and everybody else out there. Actually, go check out the new store, Frey's Hermetic Supplies. Go check out Martin Eaton Frey. They have a brand new store that's going to be opening up this Saturday. Go check them out.
You got Mike?
Well, shout out to my lodge, Panamericana 513, all the guys there. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you very much for all the knowledge you share with me. You guys, if you don't know, 513 does everything in Spanish. If you have a chance to check out a degree, I highly recommend it because they are a traditional observance lodge, and it's a real treat. So you'll really like it.
It was awesome.
Yes. And I want to say thank you to the production team here. Thank you very, very much. We greatly appreciate you.
Can't do without you.
Exactly. And also everybody who's listening, who's been supporting us, you know what? A big, big shout out to you. Thank you very much. It's been a long journey, but we're still going, man, and we're going strong. And I think it's just going to continue to grow and get better, and we're going to build more relationships with brothers and have this awesome network of people that, are into the same things we are into. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Agreed.
Ryan, you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to the brothers at Channel Islands Lodge, the brothers at Whittier Lodge 323. As usual, any human being out there trying to be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you were today, you're doing great. You're awesome. Yeah, that's probably about it for me. Other than that, as Mike said, well, I'm thankful for you guys as well. Ron, miss you. Can't wait to see you again. It's been a minute. Glad you're doing well up there with the new house and all that.
Thanks.
But other than that, we're working on a lot of more new things coming. We're working on a Discord server that we're hoping to launch soon. I know we mentioned it on the last show. It will be coming soon. We're just trying to build this community out to, bring everybody together, to give them a place where outside of Instagram and Facebook, stuff like that, everybody's there, and those places generally suck. So we want to build our own community for you guys. So
Yeah.
we're getting that all together.
Community.
Last little details together, but we're hoping to roll that out fairly soon. So again, thank you guys for all the support and following us and keeping us motivated to continue doing this thing.
That right there. So in closing, thank you for tuning in. However you're watching us, comment below and let us know what your favorite part of the show was. For questions regarding the show, content ideas, booking inquiries, or just simply just say hello, visit the contact page at keepersoftheword.net. That's it for our episode today. Thank you very much, Daniel Molina. We are over and out.
Thank you so much.